Tariffs, tariffs, tariffs. It's like lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my.
I know. Liberation Day in America, baby.
What is going to happen? I got up this morning and guess what? The sun came out.
Yeah.
Wind blew in my hair, what's left of it. Everything seemed relatively normal.
Yeah.
And so, the panic that is ensuing is kind of useless, I think. But we'll find out, won't we?
I do too, but yeah, I have thoughts on it. Tariffs are going to cause some kind of, I guess, discomfort would be the way to put it.
Yes,
there's going to be some for a little while.
Like after you eat a double helping of sausage and peppers, you'll have a little discomfort from that,
right?
But it's so worth it in the end.
Not me and my digestive system.
Maybe not you, but it is so worth it. And if we can ride this out, I mean, you think about it, I pulled up a list. Man, we are just taking a bath on tariffs straight across the board.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I mean, there isn't a country that we are winning that war with, which is insane to me.
Yeah, I've got this from from Rapid Response 47. Interesting X handle, but they published the comparison data with other countries. Let me see if I can get this blown up here a bit.
Oh, that's good. This is much better than the chart I have in front of me.
Oh yeah. So here we go. And everybody should be able to read that if you're on your desktop or if you're on your iPad. Might be a little hard to read if you're on your iPhone,
sure.
Which a lot of people, about half our people are.
I mean, I like that the UK and us, we're doing the same thing, 10%. Yep. We're fair there. They're an ally. I also heard that Israel, who was at 33% tariffs coming in, and we're at 17% to them, dropped all tariffs for the United States.
Really?
Yeah, they're at 0.
Israel did?
Yeah.
Wow.
On Liberation Day, they were like, you know what? We don't need tariffs on you.
That's glorious.
Yeah, and imagine if other countries would do the same, like, you know what? We're good. Like, we'll drop tariffs, you drop tariffs. And then you want to talk about free trade. Well, there's your free trade agreement right there,
Do you know who Batya Ungar-Sargon is?
No, other than it sounds like some kind of a sickness.
She is.
I've got the Batya.
She's a Jewish lady who is she's like I don't know. She's been, I guess who's the British guy who's been coming out for ages and really in support of Israel?
Not Russell Brand.
No. She's the female version of him. I forget what it is. But anyway, she is basically was describing, the tariffs of old. I read a last biography that I read was one on Calvin Coolidge, and it was talking about the tariffs, that were going on in the 1920s and how, critical they were to our economy, how critical they were to, our revenue that the country was bringing in. And they've kind of gone away, obviously, since slowly and steadily since then, and since income tax and all that good stuff. So, why penalize other countries when you can penalize your own people,
right?
And control the amount of wealth that they've got. But this is how we made a ton of our money back in the day. And a lot of the tariffs that have been in place for a long time, tariffs that were in place post World War II, they just never stopped, and there's nothing reciprocal about it. So it's charging us money.
Right.
You can't buy a Ford. You can't buy a Chevy in Berlin.
Right.
Right. Go to Hohenfeld's and try to find an F-150.
Right.
And you can't. If you do, you're going to pay $150,000 for it. So, yeah, you want to charge us tariffs? We're going to charge you tariffs. And this I believe, in conjunction with a reduction in the income tax, is going to be gargantuan.
I do too.
That's really where the rubber meets the road, and where where we get our big W.
And I mean, all the lefties that are out there screaming about this. I heard Schumer. Just, number one, you don't know. So stop pretending that you know.
Yeah.
Right? Because we don't know. Trump doesn't know. The economists don't know.
Don't know what'll happen?
Yeah, the result of this, exactly. But what we do know is we can't continue like we've been going.
Right.
And I think that's, you got to do something different. And if this works the way that he wants it to work and the way that his people want it to work, this is setting us up for, this isn't for today. I mean, we got to stop looking at we're missing the forest for the trees, right? Mm-hmm. We're looking at today going like, oh, this is awful. This could really hurt us at the gas pump or at the this or at the that. I'm not going to be able to buy toilet paper as cheap. I'm not going to be, whatever it is. 30 years from now, when your kids are going to the grocery store, they're going to thank us for enduring this season.
Yeah.
Where when their taxes are not what our taxes are, they're going to thank us for enduring this.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's going to be as bad as people are making it out to be.
I don't
Again, we don't necessarily.
I mean, you look at Apple, you look at Hyundai, you look at Apple, you look at all these companies that are going, okay, we're moving to the U.S.
Yeah.
They sell here.
Yeah, but here's the thing: they're now saying, all right, these tariffs are going to make it. It's not going to be feasible for us to produce it in our country and ship it to America. So let's start investing in factories in America. It's already happening. Trillions of dollars.
Trillions of dollars have already come back.
New investment. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, if it's not going to work, then why is it working?
Yeah. Well, and a lot of Americans say, you know what? I'm willing to pay. There was I forget what the stat was. It was the majority, but people were saying, you know, I'm okay paying higher prices if you bring more jobs and manufacturing back into America.
Right. Yeah. The long-term gain. Short-term suffering, long-term gain.
Right. And if we're reducing inflation at the same time that this is happening, our dollar is gaining some additional value. You know, there's so many factors at play. And I'm not an economist, obviously.
But you play one on
But
TV.
I do play one on TV.
Yeah.
But some of it just seems to be common sense. And we've been listening to the experts pontificating for decades. And what have we got? $36 trillion in debt, a $2 trillion deficit, massive rampant inflation, fraud, waste,
we
and
are
abuse.
inside out on tariffs.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
yeah, we've got guys collecting $400 million on Social Security. We've got,
well, you know, it's funny. You mentioned Schumer. You want to hear what Schumer said back in 2018?
yes, I can't wait.
You know, this is where we have
Isn't that long ago.
no. This is where we have a good symbiotic communication. You say something, and I'm like, oh, I already pulled that up.
Look at that.
I pulled that up before the show. We hadn't even talked about it. Here we go. Listen to what he said in 2018.
Look, I think the president's doing the right thing. China has been taking advantage of us for two decades. They're stealing our intellectual property, which means stealing our good-paying jobs. And I, frankly, am closer on this issue, not on many, but on this issue with President Trump than I was with Presidents Bush or Obama, because they did nothing to tell China off. Now, China, of course, will respond. But if they know we're strong and we're not going to back off, they will back off. They have far more to lose than we do. They have a $300 billion trade surplus with us. So I'm looking out, number one, for jobs. You know, if General Electric moves jobs to China, they're not unhappy, but my New York workers in Schenectady are unhappy. And so you can't let the international business companies who don't give a hoot about where their factories are govern this. You have to do what's good for the American worker.
My, how things will change.
It's amazing, isn't it? Do you have his clip from today?
Uh-uh.
Yeah, we got to find it.
I'll find it.
It's basically the opposite.
Is it?
Yeah, it's basically the opposite.
I just heard people quoting what he was saying, or not quoting, but saying Chuck Schumer was going nuts.
Yeah, he's basically saying the polar opposite, that tariffs are bad because Orange Man did it. Again, they can't just lay down their arms. They got to be upset about something. And so Orange Man bad. So Schumer is not in favor of these tariffs. They're going to hurt our economy. They're going to hurt the American worker, which he just said the opposite in 2018, right? But here we go.
Is this the one?
Yeah,
I think this is it.
This is it. Yeah.
All right, let's see here.
Your response to the president's argument that these tariffs will lead to reshoring of manufacturing overseas and allow for a level playing field for U.S. industry?
Yeah, well, he gets these ideas in his head. He has no proof, and most every study, and these guys know this, has shown that that doesn't happen, plain and simple. That's the problem. There's no factual basis here. It's a crazy idea in his head that hurts American families and does very little benefit, and in an untargeted way that makes no sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Crazy, isn't it? The doublespeak is just unbelievable.
But you know who isn't double speaking and who hasn't changed?
Trump.
Donald Trump.
He hasn't changed.
Yeah.
This is not, it shouldn't be a shock to anybody.
Politically malleable people, like we have to listen to. I mean, everybody. I'm not telling you what to do, listeners, because we got quite a few folks on right now. I'm not telling you what to do, but I would highly recommend to listen to your politicians and track them over time, which you can now do on X, thanks to the internet sleuths on X. And if they are flipping on a dime simply because of politics, that's problematic. I don't care if they're left or right.
Right. I don't either. I think if a guy on the right who's conservative Republican and we're gonna, I'm against abortion, I'm against this, and they flip flop, you're a liar. I can't trust you. A great example. My father sent something by Chris Cuomo.
Okay.
Did you hear what Chris Cuomo said about this? And blah, 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 blah. And I was talking to my sister about it, and it's like, I don't give a crap what Chris Cuomo says.
Right.
He's a liar.
You're not alone in that sentiment.
How can you take somebody who encouraged knowing that it was not right and still went forward? I mean, not only the stuff with his brother, but all the other stuff during that time when the whole country was shut down. I mean, he's basically calling for the imprisonment of people that refuse to get the chuck.
Yeah.
And so, and then he comes out later and he's saying, it was wrong. We should, that we were wrong about. I was wrong about that. Or not even, I was wrong about it. I never really believed it. It's kind of what he's like. It's like, what are you doing? You can't have it both ways. The Bible says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. And this is really important because if you're not trustworthy, I mean, you're as good as your word.
Well, and not to mention, he would, in the midst of him saying everybody needed to be imprisoned and fined and locked up or whatever,
right?
He was pretending to be hiding down in his basement. And then he has the big reveal where it's, oh, look at me, I'm coming out for the first time, even though we had all seen him walking down the streets in New York and the guy's cell phone video and him chewing him out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just insanity. So anyway, and that's the same thing with Schumer. If you're a New Yorker, and I've got friends in New York that I love and care about, and they don't vote for him, I know, they would never. But what do you do?
Yeah, we might be talking. Which Cuomo are you talking about? Chris Cuomo?
Yeah, Chris Cuomo.
Okay,
I'm talking about Schumer now.
Okay.
They they don't want Schumer in there.
Right.
He needs to go.
Yeah.
He's a liar. He doesn't even know how to cook burgers. And yet here he is, So
that for people that didn't see that one, I'm going to try to find that just for you guys.
Oh, it's so ridiculous. Because he's a man of the people, Jared. He is a man of the people. You put the cheese on before it's cooked. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
Or he's such a man, he eats it raw. That's probably what it is. Look at that.
There you go.
I'm just going to be out here cooking these burgers. I'm going to put cheese on one, and it's not cooked yet.
Raw burgers with cheese. That's how we eat them. That's how we do it in Tennessee.
Those don't even look like, they look like turkey burgers. Which is even worse.
What's the wonder meat or the fake meat?
Yeah, fake meat, near meat, whatever.
Near meat?
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah, there's nothing red about that. I just can't. I can't. And his smile, I just want to pinch his cheeks.
He's very sinister looking.
Yeah.
Something about him.
Yeah.
It's that way with a lot of folks. You can watch him and you're like, there's something about you that's just not rubbing me the right way.
Yeah, I wonder, if he came to my house, what my dog would do. She's a sweet dog, but I'm thinking she would probably attack him.
Yeah, yeah.
They sense evil. I'm convinced dogs sense evil.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, something else is the secondary and tertiary, I guess, effects of tariffs. They've already worked at the border. That's part of the reason that we're down 94%. With border crossings, and we have days where we aren't seeing anybody come to the border.
Right.
It's 100 here, a couple hundred that try to get in, and we stop them.
And what's funny is the Border Patrol has gone from being a villain to actually enjoying their job again and having fun and doing. It's like they're here to guard us, and they were not allowed to do it. They had their hands tied behind their back, and we shattered the record for crossings last month. It was insane.
The lowest ever, I believe,
Yeah.
right?
And so here's the Border Patrol's take on things for April 1st. I loved it. It was great.
Stop right here so we can get that gate. All right. Go get the gate.
I love the music too.
Yeah.
Aren't you gonna close the gate?
Nah, we're just gonna leave it open today.
Just for today?
Yeah, just today.
I love it. You got to play it to the end.
Oh, okay.
April Fools. Borders closed.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Isn't that great? And that goes out to everybody. They're all getting it down there, and they're like, "Yeah, we're not gonna. Why bother hopping trains and caravanning all the way up there when they're not letting us in anymore?
Right.
It's over.
Yeah, it is.
It's over.
Makes me happy.
Yep.
It doesn't mean that, though, I'm kind of skipping ahead on you, but doesn't mean that the problems that we've got here now aren't, that stuff I was talking about in Texas.
Yeah. Yeah. We can go ahead and pull that up because
pull it up?
that piggybacks off last week.
Well, this is the first one. I guess we can touch this one first.
Yeah.
I'm cool with that. So in Texas, they have designated March 23rd as Pakistan Day. This is wild. So this is from the Post Millennial, and it says the Texas House of Representatives passed a resolution designating March 23rd as Pakistan Day to commemorate the 85th anniversary of the Lahore Resolution and celebrate the societal, religious, linguistic, and economic contributions of the people and families who have immigrated to Texas from Pakistan. The resolution, which was adopted on March 20th, states that Pakistan Day is observed annually on March 23rd by over 80,000 Pakistanis that call Texas home and by Pakistanis all over the world. This occasion provides the opportunity to recognize the societal... what I just read. The resolution, authored by Representative Suleiman Lalani, continued, quote, the success of Texas has been bolstered by Pakistanis and Pakistani Texans through their professional work, cultural background, and values of peace and prosperity. So,
I mean, one of my favorite characters on The Simpsons is Apu, and I think they've done a fantastic job. They're honest people, everything else. However, I don't see the Irish Day. I don't see the Italian Day. I don't see the,
well, we've got, I guess, St. Patrick's Day. I don't know. That's the Irish Day, isn't it?
I guess. But like, you got to sit back and wonder, like, why, especially, okay, Pakistan in particular, like, it's a country.
Mm-hmm.
And why are you going to honor another country here like that? Why do we do that? Why do I have a calendar where I open it up and I don't understand half the holidays on it?
Right. They've got a day for everything.
Why are we celebrating other people's because we have lost our culture, right? So we're going to include we're going to be all inclusive, and we want to celebrate everybody's culture, and we want to recognize that it's Diwali, and we want to recognize that it's, and I kind of sit back and go, no, they can have Diwali. We have the 4th of July. We have, President's Day. Do they celebrate the 4th of July in Pakistan? No.
No.
Is it on the calendar in Canada? No. Is like Boxing Day is on our calendar though. All the calendars I get have, and I always think like that's Mike Tyson's favorite holiday.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't quite understand why we're still at this place where it's like, we want to recognize them. Great, recognize them. They don't need a holiday. They don't need a special day to be recognized. Go in and say thank you.
Yeah.
Like go in and say, hey, I'm glad you're here. Do it individually. Do it personally. Have a relationship with them, whatever. But you don't need to. We've just gone so far into this stream of inclusivity that it's ridiculous. It just, I don't know.
Well, and they say, oh, we're a nation of immigrants. We're a nation of immigrants. We're not. We're a nation of settlers.
Yeah.
That's really what we are. Like, people, the number one name of the game up until the very recent history has been come to America and assimilate. Before that, it was come to America, settle, and that's it. If you're coming here, if this was still wilderness and we couldn't move past the Mississippi, and you show up from Pakistan and you trek across, Native American territory and you're fighting off bears and wolves.
Yeah, and you build it.
And you build something, I will pat you on the back
We
and
will
shake
celebrate
your hand.
you.
Absolutely.
But you didn't.
But you didn't do that.
No.
You're coming here to America, not assimilating, and
Right.
now we're supposed to celebrate that, and I'm not okay with it.
Right.
I'm just not okay with that.
Right. There's no assimilation. There was no, it was probably hard to get the kind of financial resource to buy the gas station that you own or whatever it is, right?
Right.
So, but I'm sorry, you came here on a plane,
Yeah.
and then took our trains that our ancestors built. Not mine, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, there.
But here's the other thing. You can, when you come to America, if you accept American citizenship, you denounce,
Well, you're supposed to.
yeah, you're supposed to. So now I am an American, and your culture is an interesting thing about you. Where you come from is a very interesting thing about you. And I would never put that down because cultures around the world are fascinating.
Very much.
But you are an American first and foremost.
Yeah.
You're not a Pakistani. You're an American.
Right.
Period.
Right.
So why in the world are we celebrating? This is the multiculturalism that they're trying to create, and it's multiculturalism that is destroying Europe, is destroying Canada.
Oh,
And they're trying to make it destroy here.
England is in shambles. Europe is in shambles. And here's one of the reasons why. It's religion. It's infiltration by religion. And we talked about it last week. We'll talk about it again tonight. In fact, we got a headline to pull up. But there is an evil out there, all the way down to, all the way down to it's the antithesis of Christianity, right? Like, and they even have their own returner on a white horse at the end of time. It is insane how they run the parallel course to Christianity, and then they deviate so far that it becomes abundantly clear to me and anybody else that would look into this that this religion called Islam is the farthest thing from God and Christianity that there is.
Yeah.
In fact, I will go as far as to say I believe that the Antichrist in that whole situation is coming through Islam. Mm-hmm. That it is the one world religion. It will be, because its end game and its goal is already happening right before our eyes. And nobody's really doing anything about it because we want to be inclusive. Mm-hmm. Because, we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And sorry, I want to hurt their feelings. You're not going to come here and make my wife wear a burqa, right?
Right.
Like, you can go somewhere else. But here we go in Texas again.
Texas is having troubles.
Yes.
So communities divided over a proposed Muslim-focused epic, which is the East Plano Islamic Community, I believe is what it was called. And dozens of North Texas residents are speaking out about a proposed community catering to Muslims in an unincorporated part of Collin County near Josephine after several state investigations were recently launched into the project and the mosque it is tied to, the East Plano Islamic Center. A 4.5-hour meeting at Collin County Commissioner Court Monday gave residents their first chance to share their comments on Epic City, the proposed Muslim-focused community that included 1,000 homes, a mosque, a community college, and more, spanning 400 acres, about 40 miles northeast of Dallas. And, this is, let me read this part. We all want safe, inclusive communities, that require transparency, accountability, and respect for the rule of law. Epic City fails on all three, one speaker said. Quote, to allow a new group to claim and execute a 400-acre segregated city is the height of insanity, another speaker said. And I've got a preacher that he came out to the city council and delivered a very, very good message. The guy's name's Pastor Grant Barney. If you're okay with me playing this one, I can pull him up.
Yeah.
Here we go.
I'm a pastor at Calvary Chapel, North Texas, and a resident of Collin County. And my views here are my own. I appreciate you guys for holding this meeting. Thank you for inviting the community to speak on the development of Epic City. I do oppose the development of Epic City or any development that seeks to establish Sharia laws in our state or nation. Sharia law is incompatible with our laws and our Constitution. It is an abuse of our religious liberties and First Amendment rights to seek to establish a law that would remove or override our Constitution or religious liberties. Furthermore, Sharia law and Islamic philosophy are what have led to the terrorist attacks against our nation on 9/11. Sharia law and Islamic doctrine are what led to the slaughter and atrocities committed against thousands of people in Israel on October 7th in 2023, including the murder of men, women, children, and infants. Sharia law made these people believe they had a right to kill, steal, rape, and enslave those who would not join them. To this day, Islam persecutes those of other faiths around the world, including Jews, Hindus, and Christians. Thousands of Christians die each year in Nigeria, Sudan, and most currently, if you've been watching the news, Syria, at the hands of those who believe Sharia law. This is but a few nations among many where these atrocities against humanity are committed. Our founding fathers said, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. The purpose of our government in America is to secure the rights given to us by God. Sharia law and Islamic philosophy or worldviews are incompatible with our laws. You cannot have a constitution and Sharia law. You must choose one or the other. In America, the purpose of government is to secure these rights. Romans 13 says that governing authorities are appointed by God and receive their authority from the one true God, from Yahweh, from the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, the creator of all things, the great I am. Today, I call on you, whom God has given authority in our county, state, or nation, to stand against the development of communities that would seek to establish a different law in our land. I call you to protect our liberties, to be strong and courageous, for God has appointed you to this role for such a time as this." Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Wow.
It's a very gentle way to put it. Very kind way to put it.
I mean, very kind. And yeah, he might have went into the, 9/11 and it was Sharia law, and he's right. He's 100. But to those people that don't understand Sharia law and don't understand Islam at all, they're looking at it like, well, come on. But no, he's absolutely right. He's 100% accurate. And I kind of feel like if they want to do this, and this is Texas, if they want to do this, you saw the sheriffs or the guys back there with the cowboy hats on and the bulletproof vests, and it's like, yeah, you're in Texas. Like, all right, we'll go ahead and let you do it. We're going to build a big fence around that city. Y'all can't come out.
Right.
You want your own little community? You can have your own little slice of heaven.
Yeah.
But you ain't coming out.
Yeah. Well, a Christian community would be considered bigoted.
Absolutely it would.
Yeah.
Absolutely it would.
You'd immediately be called, oh, it's a bunch of Christian white supremacists is what they would say.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you go back to like the founding, the state constitutions of the founding states, right? And you look at those and read, and nowhere in there does it say anything about Islam, but it does say that to hold office in most of them, you've got to be a believer in Christ, right? And so you sit back and go, we were founded on Christian values. The people that came here, the Puritans, came here to escape the kingship, the oligarchy, so to speak, or whatever. They came here because they wanted to freely worship. That's what it was about. It wasn't about the idea of a better life. It was about, no, I'm reading the Word of God for myself now, and I can't live under this. I can't live under this oppression from the church and the state. And so,
yeah, and Islam is they call it a religion, and I guess religion because they evoke God as their their deity. It's a different God, but they evoke God as their deity. But it's really just it's a system of controls, is what it is.
Absolutely,
that's all it is. Sharia law is a system of controls. It is not in no way compatible with our Constitution, with our way of life, with our shared morals and values. It's just not.
No, and if they want it and they want to live here, then they can have it in their house, and that's about it.
Yeah, you have freedom of religion. You can practice whatever religion you want,
right? And you can do that in the four walls of your house, fine. but you're not going to impose your will. And this is where it really becomes a problem. Is the idea is they want to impose their will on the American people, on the English people, on the Scottish people, the Irish people. Like wherever they go, they try to get 10% of the population so they can then impose their will on the rest of the populace, and they'll have no choice but to, especially in our day and age where we're so afraid of being, labeled a bigot, or we don't want people to be angry at it. We want to be sensitive to other people's, religions. And no, sorry, if you're going to try to force me to do something, no.
Yeah.
And that, I think more and more you're starting to see kind of the blowback in England and in other places where they're trying desperately. They're getting into politics. They're starting to, manage things that they've never had anybody that's Islamic come in and manage. And they're starting to see the viewpoints that they have, and they're starting to push back against them.
Oh, there's cities in the UK. There's cities in tons of European countries. I could probably find a dozen videos just tonight, and it's monstrous demonstrations going on and calling for Sharia law and calling for the overthrow of their democratic system, and to have Sharia law, instated instead, or to replace their current way of governance.
Right. And in my mind, if that were to happen here, which is the goal, this is the goal. But when it happens here, I think ICE needs to deport them all, right? Because it's like, no, this is not what we do here. This is not what we're going to do. And I think another thing that will keep it from happening here to some extent is the gun ownership, the Second Amendment, right? Mm-hmm. Because this is the only country in the world where if we will never be invaded because we have the largest standing army that's ever been, right? Because everybody's got a firearm. Everybody that wants one can have one for the most part. And most of us know how to use them. And so what do you do with that? You can't do anything with it. I mean, you go, okay, we'll just leave them alone, right? And so I'm not calling for violence by any stretch of the imagination, but it would make it a lot harder for them to rally and demand Sharia law here when you've got a bunch of Americans going like, you can go home. Yeah. You can go back to where you came from.
It'd be easy for them to do it in leftist cities.
Yes. Well, Minneapolis.
Because they're betas. They're not going to stand up.
Minneapolis has a call to prayer.
Yeah.
Right? Which is insane to me.
Danny, he says, he's on comments on Facebook. And he says, why are we even listening to this? Leave your feelings at the border. Send them all back.
I agree.
There you go.
I agree 100% with Danny.
I don't disagree.
I mean, it's almost like you try to raise kids in this environment, right? And I'm raising my kids to understand this concept that nobody actually cares about your feelings. You're going to go to work. Nobody cares about your opinion. You know what? I didn't ask you for your opinion. And get used to that, because in life, this is how it is. Nobody actually cares what you think. If you go to a job, you do your job and you go home and you be quiet. Mm-hmm. You got something better, like a suggestion that's better or whatever, you can approach your boss about your suggestion, but don't approach them about your complaints as much, right? Because the guy that does that ends up at the bottom and stays there, or they find a way to get rid of you. I mean, it's not hard to do. You can fire anybody. You just got to find a way to do it. Yeah. And so I think it's the same concept with this kind of thing where you're going to come here and like this judge who's trying to say that these gang members didn't get due process.
Oh, yeah.
Like, okay, wait a minute. Last time I checked, number one, they're here illegally. What due process exactly should a non-citizen, what do they deserve? Do they deserve due process for being here in the first place illegally and then committing crimes? So
that's the thing. Due process is, our Constitution grants it to them, but they're, here's an example. The MS-13 as an example.
Yeah.
MS-13 is a terrorist organization now. So
right.
If you're part of a terrorist organization, due process kind of goes out the window. I mean,
I would think so.
Yeah. And so that's why they're, shipping them back. Eli, or is it Eli? What's his name? Mystal. This guy, I can show you what he looks like. He came out and said, I get it. They're illegal immigrants, but we shouldn't just be shipping all these people out to. This is the guy. We shouldn't be just rounding them up and shipping them back to their home country. And you have to ask yourself why. Why? I don't understand the problem. Like, these people are not American citizens. They are terrorists.
They have no desire to be American citizens.
No, they are terrorizing like legal American citizens,
Right.
naturalized, or people that are born here. And the reason is it's their voting block. That's why they're putting up a stink about it.
Absolutely, it is.
It's a whole voting block that they're losing, wholesale.
Right. And I will tell you that if they wouldn't cry about it at all, if all of a sudden it was, you have to prove that you're a citizen to vote.
Yeah.
Right. But all these states that are standing in the way of that, which needs to be that needs to be a federal law.
Yeah. But it's a tricky thing because even if you're here illegally, you still get due process of law. But it's the same thing against cruel and unusual punishment. Just because you're here illegally and you broke a law coming into this country doesn't mean that we can torture you without,
Right.
you know what
I
I'm saying?
get that.
So they get some protections, but at the same time, deportation should be fast and or immediate
Right.
once they're found.
I think that's what I struggle with is like, what exactly is the due process that they're missing?
Oh, right.
Right? Like they're here illegally, they're going home. What's the due process that's needed for that? I mean, what are you going to legally challenge that?
Yeah.
I don't understand why that judge was like, you need to turn those planes around. No. I mean,
They shouldn't be legislating from the bench anyway.
no. Number one. Number two, a federal judge shouldn't have authority over the executive branch
Exactly.
ever. Because then how many federal judges are there?
Oh gosh, a lot. There's a lot.
Right. And so they're not the law. They are not the law. They are to interpret the law, right? The Supreme Court has the ultimate say in all these things. And
They do, but they were so irrelevant even from our founding. It wasn't until I think FDR that they actually took them out of the basement of the Capitol. That's where the Supreme Court used to be. They were in the basement, and it was a last minute thing, kind of like, oh, the judges. Where are we going to put the judges? We'll put them in the basement of the Capitol.
basement.
Because their job was really insignificant. And it wasn't until, I'm almost certain that it was FDR. I don't think it was Woodrow Wilson, but it was one of those. But FDR really started giving a lot of authority to the Supreme Court justices, and this has progressed as they do when they get their foot in the door. Progressives get their foot in the door. They start expanding power, and I believe that Woodrow Wilson or FDR or and LBJ, all those people had the vision of what we hear from the Democrat Party now, which is expand the Supreme Court, make it bigger, do it when we've got a Democrat majority in the House and the Senate and the presidency, and then we have one party rule in perpetuity forever and ever. And so this has just been a long process, and they play the long game really well, but it's been the long process of giving them this much power so that they can leverage it against the will of the people, which is the executive and the legislature.
right.
Yep.
Yeah. And what's sad is you got one Broberg or whatever his name is, right? That judge who is standing in front of, I think it's 80 some odd injunctions.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Like you sit back and go, what in the world? Where do these guys get off telling the president of the United States and the legislative branch that they are not to do things? Like who did they think they are?
Was it Andrew? I think it was Andrew Jackson that something was. I'm trying to remember the history behind it, but there was something that a Supreme Court justice or somebody had forced him to do, and I remember I loosely remember the quote, and he said, he said, if this be the will of whoever, then fine, but let him enforce it, and it required the executive to enforce it.
Right.
So
Right. I remember this vaguely where it's like, yeah, you go ahead and make that rule, and then you go ahead and enforce it.
yeah,
Saying I'm not going to, in a sense, like you want to do this, then you do it. Yeah, which needs I just don't understand why it's got to be such a. First of all, you would think it'd be a black eye for this judge, but it's not. Like, because the left is so they're so delusional that they believe that this is right. And you sit back and go, how in the world, when last time I checked, the popular vote wants these people gone, right? We want these people gone. We don't want, city blocks in Aurora, Colorado to belong to a gang or to belong to anybody but the people of Aurora, right? And yet they're going, no, this is okay. We need to leave them alone. They need due process. Well, tell that to the people whose door got kicked in. Tell that to these people that are American citizens who pay their taxes, who have been robbed, beaten, in some cases murdered and raped. Tell that to them that these people deserve due process, because they're not giving due process. They're not giving due process to the people they hurt, but they deserve due process. And I just can't fathom a judge standing there going like, no, we can't deport these people without due process. These are murderers. These are convicts in their own country. I mean, you saw them. We played it, the max security prison.
Oh yeah, the one in El Salvador.
Yeah, where they sent them back to El Salvador, and they get to El Salvador, and they're not welcomed with open arms. They're going right to jail because they've murdered in El Salvador, right? Mm-hmm. And they're here, but they deserve due process. They're murderers.
Well, they came out with Pam Bondi was getting grilled by reporters because one of the people it was a mistake that they sent the person, but come to find out the person was MS-13. They were still a gang member. They were a leader in their area, but there was a paperwork mix-up, and they used that paperwork mix-up even though, okay, the person was still a criminal.
Right.
They were still supposed to go to prison in El Salvador.
Right.
That, maybe we ought to stop all this and do a more thorough, and we ought to apply a little bit of scrutiny to the people that we're sending out. And they're doing that, but when you're trying to mass deport as many people as you are, there's going to be some errors.
You're going to have an error. Whoopsie.
You're going to have an error, whoopsie daisy. But at the end of the day, you're technically still a criminal because you came in here
You're illegally here.
Exactly.
So, yeah, no matter how you slice this, no matter...
If you accidentally send an Argentinian criminal to an El Salvador prison, I'm not really going to lose sleep over that.
No.
You know what I mean? Get them out of the country, because you can't. This isn't in the name of kindness. We've talked about that before.
Yeah.
That when you put your own citizens in danger,
In harm's way.
that's not an act of kindness.
And when you call it what it is, because you said it earlier, you're putting your own citizens in harm's way for votes. Mm-hmm. You're trying to buy the vote, just like they bought the vote in Wisconsin for the judge, right?
Yeah.
Where Soros and them funneled millions and millions and millions of dollars into this woman's campaign, Crawford, I think her name was, and then you had the other Republican nominee, so to speak, who Musk gave a couple million to, and it was all over the media, right? I mean, it was all over the media about Musk. Oh, he's supporting him. They need to let the numbers out, but they won't. They won't. They only want you to hear one side of this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the woman wins because it's millions of dollars, and because the Republican was firmly against abortion straight across the board, no matter rape, incest. It's wrong, and you shouldn't do it. A position that we agree with.
200%.
But we're also not in politics.
Right.
So when you're a politician, if you have a real hardline stance on something like that in a state like Wisconsin, which it's a swing. I mean, it used to not be, but it is. You're not going to bode very well. You got to be kind of a little more watered down, I guess, which is sad, because I would think, this is just me, but I admire people who take stands for what they believe in. Mm-hmm. Even if I don't agree with them, I admire them because they take a stand for what they believe in, and they're not afraid of the fallout, right? But hey, that's just me. So,
yep.
Yeah.
By the way, the Andrew Jackson, so President Jackson, this is from AI, Google AI. But President Jackson, Andrew Jackson, famously disregarded a Supreme Court ruling in Worcester versus Georgia in 1832, famously stating, "John Marshall has made his decision. Now let him enforce it." And so it was about the Supreme Court ruled in Worcester versus Georgia that the state of Georgia could not interfere with the Cherokee Nation's sovereignty and that the Cherokee were entitled to the land they occupied. So, I mean, you could probably debate that court case. I don't know a whole lot about it, but
Don't know much
nonetheless,
about it
that's what
either,
he was
but-
talking about.
but-
He said, fine, you want to rule that way? Now
You can
enforce it.
enforce it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have no way to do that.
Right. Right. So yeah, it is an interesting time we live in because you've got federal judges trying to overrule the executive branch. It's not even the Supreme Court. I mean, that's the thing. It's not even the Supreme Court. It'd be like these guys are one step up from parking tickets, you know, and they're trying to legally overthrow the executive branch and file injunctions against them and make them turn airplanes around and make them. What else can they make him do? What else are they going to make them do? Meanwhile, they're going to tie up the Justice Department. And this is a whole game. Just like they tied Trump up with all kinds of investigations and everything else his first go around. Now they're going to try to tie up the Justice Department to keep them busy because they know the Justice Department is going after corruption for the first time in a long time. The Justice Department is not going to be part of the problem anymore. They're rooting this out. They're firing people. They're letting people go. They're going to try to hold people accountable. And so what do? Let's tie them up in court with injunctions. Keep them busy. They won't have time to go after Adam Schiff. They're not going to have time to go after because they're busy, you know, trying to get some of this agenda pushed through. And it's sad. I do believe it's a game.
Yeah. Isn't that wild, though, that the people that are part of the law enforcement in this country are actively trying to prevent the enforcement of laws? It's really, it's so strange that just because of the way somebody votes or just because of the party that person is, they're willing to stop law and order inside of America, put Americans at risk. They do not care, all for political power and all for votes.
It's all about power and votes.
It's so wild to me.
And I will tell you that
And I have to say too that this shows it used to be that a judge, the judges, right? When you watch the State of the Union, the judges sit there, they don't move, they don't clap, they're not supposed to show any favoritism, but you know exactly how, not exactly how, the ones on the right are a bit flaky, but the left, the judges on the left, you know exactly how they're going to go on any given
time.
Yeah, any given issue. It's not going to be questioned. Like you're like, oh yeah, they're actually absolutely going to go.
they're going to vote against this,
Yeah,
or they're going to vote for it.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah, you know exactly how they're going to vote because they don't. And I hate to say it, but their job is supposed to be to interpret the Constitution and to vote accordingly, right? And you know, I think some of them don't even bother to read it. It's all about what feels right, what's popular, what's, you know.
Ketanji Brown Jackson doesn't even know what a woman is, so I have a hard time believing she can interpret the Constitution.
That's kind of what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
Yeah, where it's like you can't define that. So if you can't define that, then you automatically, in my mind, are disqualified from being on the bench because you won't. You can define it, but you won't. You choose not to. What else do you choose not to define? What else are you standing in the way of because you don't want anybody's feathers to be ruffled? So you're going to say, I just have a problem with that. Yeah, with all of it. But hey, tonight we've got a shorter show than normal. We've got a full week ahead of us. Jared is traveling all over the country.
Yeah.
And so pray for him if you're the praying type.
Yeah.
And he's leaving out tomorrow morning. So I said, we'll just have a short episode tonight. We will not have an episode next week.
That's correct. Yeah.
Sadly. And I expect great things to happen and we won't be able to talk about them. So
If I can, in an evening, we might be able to do it via link. It just depends on my schedule.
do like
my
a
time,
remote.
and just do a remote one, and I'll do it from a hotel room.
cell phone videos.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And
piece them together.
and we'll piece something together and we'll make it happen.
No fancy intro, no fancy,
No, I can still do the fancy intro and everything.
look at this guy.
Man, I'm telling you, I got
at
this
this guy.
I got this live streaming thing down pat.
Technology.
That's it. I'm the tech guy.
But I did want to say, like, the tariffs are in play. And today, nothing has changed. It will be interesting to see over the course of the next month if we feel a pinch in this or not. It will be interesting to see how many jobs are created and lost. It's all going to be one of those risk cost, it's all going to be the we just got to see what happens and where it lands. I do believe, however, that in the long term, there's a big gain for this. It might hurt in the short term, but in the long term, there will be a gain from this, and we just got to hold on.
I agree with that. We're trying something new. We're trying something we haven't tried in 100 years, over 100 years. Yeah. So
we're actually trying what they designed it to do. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the simple way of looking at it, right?
If we get this thing down pat, I mean, we could. Long term, I would love to see us go away from the income tax.
Oh, I would too. Abolish the IRS. It'd be
Abolish the IRS. No income tax.
So
everything's done on tariffs. You could do a purchase tax, like a sales tax.
Imagine a world where you get to keep what you create.
Unbelievable.
Wouldn't that be something?
But I dream.
Right? I mean,
but I dream.
Yeah, we jest because that's not reality. But I mean, if you build it, they pay you for it. You get to keep all of it.
Yeah.
Instead of having
could be that way.
It should be that way. But anyway, until next week. We didn't get into anything deep tonight. Nothing spiritual. Nothing crazy. But in a couple weeks, I really would like us to take a bit of a deep dive. I know that there's been stories that have been coming out now that the pyramids, Snopes fact-checked it for us. Thank you, Snopes. We also know that Snopes didn't do any actual research on it before they posted that was false. But there's actually transcripts from the release which were in Italian that when they're it's fact. They've done this. They've seen beneath the pyramids, and 2 kilometers down, it's doing that. And so you're going to hear different things come out about that, but I'm going to tell you that this is actually what's happened, and it just reflects back to fallen angel technology. It reflects back to Scripture, and if you don't, this is the best part about it, is if you don't believe the Bible, you better start to, because it talks about this kind of stuff. And, I just reinforces, I love when things happen that reinforce the Word of God as truth. And we sit back and go, how can that possibly be? Right? It's really simple. It's already been written. It was written before the flood happened. It was there. And so, I would like to take some deep dives, though, into a few different things when we get back. And, of course, politics is always our favorite. But I would love to approach this one in particular because I think there's so many things about this that rewrite history.
Yeah.
The narrative, all of it.
Yeah. Our understanding of history has been so distorted over the years. And not that I buy into everything Graham Hancock says, but just because he is challenging it, if you watch
Absolutely.
Graham Hancock, that challenging the status quo has gotten him absolutely crushed by a collective group of historians, like the establishment historians.
Yeah.
You're not even allowed to question it anymore.
Right.
So when new information like this is released, what's, like you were saying, Snopes?
Yeah. They're on it.
Got to crush it.
They're on it.
Yeah.
That's false. It never happened. And you've got other archaeologists coming out saying like, well, that's not true. Blah, blah.
Does that mean there's a big Smithsonian? Like, there's big pharma. Is there a big Smithsonian? A big history?
Well, I'll tell you what, the more you dig into that, that's a whole nother animal about the, hundreds, if not thousands of bodies of giants that they've found that just magically disappeared when the Smithsonian showed up. And so you won't hear about them.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, up until the 1800s, there were pictures. There were all kinds of different things. And all of that's just disappeared. Even in the Smithsonian, they had pictures of giants and skeletons, and then it all just went away. Because you can't have you can't have Darwinism, right? You can't have evolution when you've got superior races that have disappeared. That doesn't make any sense, right? Where you can't, how do you have giants that disappeared when little man stays, and just
Right.
lots of different things with it. Of course, and you can't have. I just don't get the evolution theory because we still have monkeys and apes that we evolved from, and that's not how evolution works. Generally, you evolve from something, that something ceases to exist, right? So, yeah. Anyway, but that's a whole nother deep dive into how that theory came about, how the Rockefellers pushed that through textbooks and everything else, and how it's all a lie of the enemy to try to indoctrinate the world into the disbelief in God and creation. Pretty simple.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But till 2 weeks from now, keep your eyes to the skies. Our king is returning, braver than the rest. Signing off.